Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm creating a few tutorials on Go programming because I think explaining what you know to somebody is the best way to learn. If you can explain it to somebody else, that kind of means that you know it very well. So, as part of my efforts to become a better Go programmer, I'm releasing like a series of problem-solving tutorials on Go programming. So a couple of things that we're going to do that. The objective for the day is there is a problem on Hackerrank, which is like a really good problem, and I'll explain the problem first, and then we'll break down the solutions as to what are the things that you need to know, that you need to learn in order to provide a solution for this problem. That's what we are planning to look at. Now this assumes that you know like the basics of Go programming, because I think the major challenge that most of us face is that we know what are variables, what are functions, what are slices, what are everything in Go, but we don't really know how to use them. So I guess solving these problems, it's like a really good way to figure out how to actually work with Go. Now the objective in this Hackerrank problem, if I can quickly outline this, the objective is they're going to give us a string. Like they're going to give us like a slice of string, multiple strings. So they're going to tell us how many strings do we have, and then as you can see here, then you're going to have like the list of the strings that they give. So in other programming languages you might call it a list. In Go it's called a slice. And if you're really confused about slices, right, the way I was when I was learning it, I like to refer to it as a collection. So it's a collection of slices. It's a collection of strings. So they're going to give us a couple of strings. So right now they're saying they're going to give us a string called hacker and a string called rank. And this string obviously will be different in the test cases, but you are supposed to provide an output like this. Now how do you come up with that output? So the conditions here are, you basically break this string down in the index value. Now if you know about indexes, right, so this is what the index values are. So you have 0, which is H, 1 index value, which the value is A, 2 index, which is the value of the actual value is C. Now what you need to do is, first you need to print all the values of the even indexes. So 0 is also an even number. So what you can do, so what it would look like is, first of all you need the values of the even numbers, and then you need the values of the odd indexes. When I say numbers, I mean indexes. So if I was to actually write it out, right, the expected output goes something like this. So H, because that's 0, the second or the next even index is number 2, which is the value of C, and the next even index is number 4, which is the value of E. So that's what you have in terms of your even indexes. And then you provide a space, and then you have the values of the odd indexes. So the odd indexes in this case is 1, 3, and 5, and the actual values are A, K, and R. So this is what they expect as an output. So if you notice, they're saying the sample input would be hacker, and the output is HCE AKR, because you have to divide them, not really divide them, because you have to manipulate the string with the even indexes and the odd indexes. That's what you're supposed to do. So, and again, this is just one example. You will have a collection of strings. So they're saying the sample output is hacker and rank, which is why hacker converts to this, and rank, if you think about the indexes, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now in this case the even indexes are 0 and 2. So you have Rn first, and then you have 1 and 3, which is AK. So Rn space AK and HCE space AKR. That's the kind of output that they're expecting, and that's the problem that we are planning to solve for the day. That's what we have to do. Now in order to actually solve this problem, right, or any problem in general, the best way when you're learning programming is to break the problem down into smallest possible things that you can do. Now in order to break it down, I think there are a couple of things that I need to know. First thing is, well, they're giving you like a collection of strings, right? So how do you read from the standard input? That's the first problem. Read from the standard input. Now once you have those values, the second problem is, let's see, the second problem I'd like to do is, how do you create a different function that will get the standard input and then it will perform this operation? Now, we are still not talking about how to solve the problem. We're just talking about how to break your code down so that it becomes really easy to solve the problem that you have, right? So the second is create another function to return the expected values. That's the second part. And then we actually get to the nitty-gritty of how do we solve the problem. And then we call the external function into the main function in order to actually return the expected values. So call the external function into your main, right? So that's what we wanted. So let's solve them one by one. So the first problem is, how do you write from standard input? Now we're going to go ahead and use Visual Studio. You can obviously use any IDE of your choice. Now in order to read from the standard input, you need a couple of standard libraries of Go. So the libraries that we're going to use is, let's just say package main, and let's import the libraries. Now libraries we're going to use is, first library is fmt, because we're going to read from the standard input and then we're going to print it out. And another library that I want is called buff.io. So buff.io actually gives you an ability to create a scanner which will scan from from the standard input. And I also need OS, because OS is the one that can actually read from the standard input and pass it on to the scanner that will be created by buff.io. Now if this is too much to understand, just bear with me. As I said, a little bit of basics of Go programming is expected that you know, and we're just trying to build on top of it. That's all that we're doing here. So let's go ahead and create our function. So func main and begin the function. And the only thing that I want this function to do right now is to be able to read from the standard input. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a variable called output. Now Go in general appreciates single character variables, so you would rather call it I instead of output, but I'm just using longer words so that it makes sense to us while we are learning. So I'm going to say output is a make, so I'm going to make a slice of strings. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm saying output, so a variable input is a slice of strings, so that I have the variable, and then I want to create a scanner that will read from the standard input and store that data in this output. That's what I'm trying to do, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a new scanner, and this scanner will come from buff.io. So I'm going to say buff.io new scanner, and it's going to read from the OS standard in. Now if you see, OS does have an option of standard in. So what I'm doing is, I first of all created a variable where I would want this to be stored in the future, the actual data from the standard in. Now I'm creating a scanner, which is possible because I have imported the buff.io library. So I'm saying buff.io create a new scanner and name it scanner. And obviously if you're creating a scanner, where do you want it to read from? I want it to read from the standard input. So standard input is a part of the OS library. That's the reason we also imported OS, because I want this scanner that is created by buff.io to read from the standard input, right? That's what we want to do. And because we have multiple values, right? It's not just one input. There could be like multiple values, and the list might just go on. So what I want to do is, I might want to run a quick for loop. So I might say something like for scanner.scan. So for each scan that you do, so if you have, like in our case, we're going to get 3 inputs, right? So we're going to get a number that defines how many strings is expected. Then we get the actual strings. So for each time you receive a new input, I want you to append my actual input. So initially, when we created this variable, this was a blank collection of variables. So this is a 0 value, right? But every time you get an input, I want you to add that to the list that I have. So what I'm going to say is, I'm going to use the built-in append function, and I'm going to say add that to my input. And what do you want to add to your input? Well, I want to add the text of the actual scan that was received by the scanner. Now, of course, I've said it before, this video does assume that you know a little bit of basics, and then if you don't understand some part of it, all it takes is, go to the Go doc and look at what can you do with scanners. So a couple of things that I'm doing here. I'm saying take an input and then create a scanner, and for every input that you get from the scanner, you append it to my input collection or input list, or as Go like to put it, an input slice of string. So now I should have a proper input that I can perform the actions on. So right now we weren't even solving the problem. We were basically learning how to read from the input. Expected package found, yeah, that's okay. So we are just reading from the input. That's all that we are doing right now. So now that we have that input, right, we can also just print it out just to see that this part is working. So if I say fmt print line output, so what I want to do is, for now, before I even solve the problem, I just want to make sure that this part is working, right? So I'm going to copy this, and let's go back to the Hackerrank challenge that we've been working on, and let's paste it in here, and let's see at least if we can print what we get from the standard in, right? So let's run the code and let's see what do we get. Okay, so obviously we missed something. It says cannot load the package main solution number 3. Okay, yeah, apologies. So line 3, it's not supposed to have the comma. Apologies, I've been working with multiple languages lately, so these things tend to happen. So you're not supposed to have a comma in multiple outputs, right? Now, obviously the answer is wrong because we haven't really solved the problem, but this is what the Hackerrank standard input provided to us. It's a number 2 hacker and rank. And if you look at my output, I do have it. I do have number 2, I do have the string hacker, and I do have the second string, which is called rank. Although our answer is not as they expected, but we know for a fact that what we've done is working. Alright, so now that we actually have this, let's just figure out how would you solve the problem. What we have right now is we are able to read the standard input, right? Now before we actually write the code for solving the problem, it's kind of important that we understand how to solve the problem. Now in order to figure out how to solve the problem, I want to use probably some drawing tool where I can draw something and explain what is it that I'm trying to do, or what is it that we are planning to do to actually solve the problem. Now give me 1 second. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, remember that you're getting, oh, you can't draw here, can you? No, you can't, sorry. Let's just get paint, this age-old problem solver. Now what you're trying to do is you have a list of strings, right? So you have first value, you have second value, and you have third value. Now this could be any word. This could be my name, Nishant. This could be Monday. This could be Sunday. So you have a list. Now before you can figure out the indexes of the word in the list, you first of all have to iterate over the list, right? So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to iterate over this entire list so that we work with one word at a time. So what we're going to do is, the first thing we need is one for loop here that's going to iterate over the list, because of which the first time it's executed, it's going to look at this. The second time it's executed, it's going to look at this, and then it's going to look at this. Now when you're iterating over that list, each time you have one word, right? So now I'm looking at this specific word. Now once I have that word, I can create another for loop which looks at each character of that word so that we can actually work with the index. So the solution looks like this. You iterate over the entire list, then for each string, remember it's a collection of string, it's a slice of string. So for each string, you look at each and every word, or each and every rune, or each and every character of that string, and if the index of that string is even, then that has to be put into a variable called, you can call it whatever you want, but that has to go into a variable called even. And if the index is not even, then it has to be called odd, right? That's what the solution looks like. So essentially you're going to have two for loops. First for loop to iterate over the list, and second for loop to iterate over the characters of the string that you got from the list, right? I hope I was clear when I was saying that. And now that I have it, let's create another function where we'll do all of these things, right? So I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call it output, like output. You can call this whatever you want. And this function is going to accept one parameter called data, which will be a slice of string because my input is a slice of string, right? So this function will accept a slice of strings. And let's also create a couple of variables. So let's create a variable called even, let's create a variable called odd, which will be a string. Now we can actually start writing our for loop. So I can say for index and value of the range of data. So essentially iterate over my range of data. And if you're familiar with the for loop or Go programming, you get the index as well as value. So when this runs for the first time, it's going to look at the first item in the slicer list, in the slicer string. Then when it runs for the second time, it's going to look at the word. So in this example, right, the example that they have given us, if I run this for loop, in the first iteration it looks at 2, in the second iteration it looks at hacker, and the third iteration it looks at rank. And now that I'm able to iterate over it, I want to do certain manipulations on each and every string that I get, right? I hope you get the point. So we are breaking down the entire collection of strings into one string at a time so that we can do X with the string that we received. So this for loop is going to give me each and every string. Now before we get into the second for loop, I want to set my even variable to an empty string, a 0 value string, and I also want to set my odd string to a 0 value string. Now that you have the string from that collection for index and value in the range of string that we received from here, I want you to check. So this is where you get the actual word. This is where you get the word hacker in the first execution. This is where you get the word rank in the second execution. So in this loop, check for each and every character, and if the index of the character is even, this is how you check if it's even. If the remainder is 0, if you divide it by 2, then it's an even number. So the question is, if the index is even, then you simply add it to my even. So I can say something like string w. So what I'm saying is, if the index is even, then you add that value to my even string. An easier way, if you're new, would be even equals even plus the string of w. So this is the index, this is the value. So I'm saying my even is currently set to blank, and I'm saying if the index is even, then you add that character to my even string. And right now this w, the value, is not really a string, it's technically a rune, so I'm converting it to a string. There is no such thing called as typecast in Go, you call it conversion. So I hope you get the idea. So if the index is even, you add it to my even string. Else, I mean, obviously there are only two options, right? It could either be even or it could be odd. So else, we are assuming it will be odd if it's not even, so you simply add it to my odd. That's what you do. And once you've done it, you should have the string ready. And once you have it, let's actually print it. So let's say fmt println my value and a new line, and I want the values of even and odd. That's what I want. So this function is going to iterate over the list, and for each and every word in that list, it's going to iterate over the character, and if the index of the character is even, it's going to add that word to the string. It's going to append that word in my string even, and if the index is odd, it's going to append that word in my string called odd. And now that we have this function, I guess we can try it out, right? So let's go to our main function and let's use it. So let's say I want output to, I want to call my output function, and it's going to take my input as the data. So don't forget, we actually read from the standard input and we called it input. So run my output function, and it's going to take input as my input, which is a slice of data, right? So let's copy this. Where is it? Let's copy this. Let's paste it in the solution, and let's see if it works, right? Let's run this and let's see what do we get. All right, so it says you failed. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said print ln. You want to say print f, right? So now run the code and let's see what happens. Alright, so now it does look like our solution is proper, right? So it does say your output is 2 HCE AKR RN AK. The expected output is HCE AKR RN AK. So my answer is correct, but you don't really need the first the first item in the collection, right? So maybe you could just do something like this. So output, give me everything after the first indices of this entire collection, right? Because I don't need the first one, I need everything after that. So if I do something like this, that should solve our problem, right? It does say congratulations, your problem is solved. So now that's how I reach to the output. And if I submit this code by running multiple test cases, if everything was proper, all of them would clear themselves, and they did, right? So this is how we solve the problem. At this point, I'm not planning to post this on GitHub or someplace, because I don't know how often would I be doing this, but I guess you can also just look at the code in the YouTube video. So that's all that I wanted to cover for now, and maybe I'll put some more in the future. I hope you liked it, and thank you for your time. Have a good day.